everyone, my name is Caitlin and welcome to my channel. Today is April 1st, which means I'm going to be discussing all the books I read in March with you guys. I have 7 books total and I'm just going to get started. So the first book is Dead Souls by Nikolai Gogol. I made a whole video about this book, so I'm not going to stay too long on it. You can watch it somewhere up here. I'll put like a little card. I gave this book 4 stars. Gogol is my favorite author. I love him to death. I love how he characterizes people. I love how he uses imagery and just really unique metaphors and similes for people, places, things, just everything. But I very much liked this. I do wish I liked it a bit more. This story is about a man named Chichikov, and he comes to a small Russian town, which is kind of a popular motif in Gogol's writing. And he pays a visit to a lot of landowners in this town, and he wants to buy their dead souls or their dead serfs or their dead slaves. Obviously, this is a weird request. Why would someone want to buy these landowners as like dead slaves? But all the landowners do end up agreeing to selling Chichikov these dead souls, and each chapter pretty much focuses on a different landowner. Chichikov meets all these people, and I believe it was the skeptical widow who obviously was skeptical about what Chichikov was doing, and she actually went to one of the wives of a government official and told her what was going on. From there, a bunch of rumors started, tall tales about Chichikov and his motivations, because no one could really discern the point of what he was doing. Like, no one could figure out why he wanted to buy these dead souls, because it just didn't make sense. Chichikov did believe that buying dead souls would be profitable to him, and that's why he didn't tell the landowners his reasoning for this. But over the course of 3 days, a bunch of rumors and false stories about Chichikov fly around town, and basically Chichikov is run out of town. And that's where volume 1 of this story ends. This edition, which is the Vintage Classics edition, it is so pretty, includes volume 2. Volume 2 is not finished, and you can tell. So volume 2 is why this story isn't 5 stars for me, I think. A lot of the writing is very forced and strained. You could tell that there are just very lengthy descriptions that just didn't need to be in here. And I do love Gogol, so reading volume 2, I didn't want to give up, and I didn't. But I really just wanted him to put the pen down. Like, there was no need for all of this writing. So I really do love and admire Gogol so much, but yeah, you could definitely tell that it wasn't his best work. Of course, like, he still wrote it, so it is still interesting, but it's just a little too much. Volume 2 kind of starts with this one landowner named Tentetnikov, and basically Gogol is describing him because Chichikov is going to meet him in a new Russian town and kind of do the same spiel all over again. But at the end of volume 2, he actually does face some consequences. I will say some because he kind of like just runs off again. But 4 stars for Dead Souls. Next, I finished Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. I am so happy I finally finished this book. I definitely started this last year, maybe in 2021. I honestly don't remember. So I gave this book 4 stars because these letters were written between 63 and 65 AD. So that's like 2,000 years ago. That's like a long time ago. And a lot of what Seneca says in his letters to his friend Lucilius holds today. Like, the man had a point. Seneca's ideas were way ahead of his time, but I don't think any of what he says is new information in today's day and age. Some of Seneca's advice was to take a cold bath. Meanwhile, like, I feel like I see so many reels and TikToks and YouTube shorts about like the benefits of taking an ice bath. Like, that's not new information to me. Same for minimalism. Seneca believes that having an excess of something isn't good, which is true, but in today's day and age, minimalism is an aesthetic, it's a trend. And yes, it does have mental health benefits. It's more about having like an aesthetic background or like an all-white background. It's not always about the mental health benefits of it. Seneca also wrote, which I thought was hilarious, because he starts this letter off saying, "Do you think you are the only person to have had this experience? Are you really surprised, as if it were something unprecedented, that so long a tour and such diversity of scene have not enabled you to throw off this melancholy and this feeling of depression?" I thought that was interesting because I keep seeing everywhere that like no one has a unique experience, and that's so true, but like this man said it first. Well, he definitely didn't say it first, but he said it in the year like 63 AD. But now I have to see it on TikTok every day. So this book was difficult for me to read just because I see so many of these ideas every day on social media that like it did not make me want to read this book. But Seneca's ideas were ahead of his time, and I think if you want an introduction to philosophy, this would be a great place to start, because these ideas are not going to be super new to you or super convoluted if you use social media. The third book I read this month was The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler, and this is a series about Philip Marlowe. He's a detective, and this book was published in the late 1930s. So you can think like hard-boiled detective story, black and white, film noir, lots of rain and newspapers, diners, coffee, cigarettes. Like, that's the vibe of this book. And if that's what you want, like, this book will probably be perfect for you. I also don't think you have to read each book in chronological order. I believe each book follows a different case. But The Big Sleep, ooh, okay. So the overall story, I think, was good, but the way Raymond Chandler wrote women was just so unnecessary. I knew going into this story that he did not write women very respectfully, and like, I'll be honest, that stuff doesn't really bother me. I look past it because, you know, I think of the time it was written and when it was published, and it's whatever. It's not great, but it's whatever. But oh my gosh, I like literally did not want to keep reading this book, because every time he talked about a female, it was just so unnecessarily sexual. All the women just like wanted to be with Philip Marlowe. They were so attracted to him. They literally would like be frothing at the mouth for this man. And like it just isn't even realistic, honestly. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend this book, especially if misogyny bothers you. I am still gonna read the second book in the series. Hopefully it's not as disrespectful to women as it was in the first book, because I did like the aesthetic and the themes in the book. I just, wow, I didn't know women could behave that way. If you want to read The Big Sleep or probably any of Raymond Chandler's books, just be warned, there's gonna be some sexism. Plays by Anton Chekhov. This was so nice to read after The Big Sleep, let me tell you. So I did read all 5 plays in this book, which were Ivanov, The Seagull, Uncle Vanya, Three Sisters, and The Cherry Orchard. I kind of put these into like 2 groups. So the first one is like kind of the depressed male protagonist, and don't get me wrong, I love this character. This is like my favorite character to follow. And in this group is Ivanov, The Seagull, and Uncle Vanya. Out of those 3, Ivanov was my favorite play. Actually, out of the whole bunch, Ivanov was my favorite play. And it follows a man named Ivanov, if you couldn't discern that from the title, who is just a depressed guy. Like, nothing in particular made him depressed. It was just life, and like I feel that. In turn, his wife Anna Petrovna, she reacts negatively to that because she gave up her religion, her family, pretty much everything to marry him. And he just kind of stops loving her, which is sad but true because he's so depressed. There's also another character, Shabelsky. Shabelsky's definitely my favorite. He's Ivanov's uncle, but there is one quote from him that I want to read, which kind of just like explains his character to a T. I vent my indignation and scorn, and in response to me people laugh. I laugh and they shake their heads at me sadly and say the old man's gone round the bend. But more often than not, they don't hear me or pay me any attention. Poor Shabelsky. But I think like deep at his core, like he's just a sad guy, because then the next page, he's talking to Anna Petrovna and they're talking about what they would do if they won the lottery. Shabelsky, after thinking, first I would go to Moscow and listen to the gypsies. Then I'd go off to Paris. I'd take an apartment there, go to the Russian church. Anna, and what else? Shabelsky, I'd sit for whole days on my wife's grave and think. I'd sit like that on her grave till I dropped dead. My wife is buried in Paris. A pause. Anna, it's dreadfully boring. Shall we play another duet? Shabelsky, all right, set out the music. He just misses his wife, like, oh my gosh. So yes, Ivanov was my favorite, particularly Act 1. The Seagull and Uncle Vanya, they were good. They were definitely good, but I think the depressed male protagonist became a little repetitive, like reading one play after the other. So I would like to reread them at separate times. I also really liked The Three Sisters. It's about three sisters and their father passed away, so they all have to work. And it talks a lot about work and love and time, but I really liked that play. And The Cherry Orchard was good too. That play dealt a lot with denial and grief. So overall, I gave this book 4 stars. Ivanov was definitely my favorite. I recommend that one the most out of all these plays. But yeah, I love Chekhov. I really missed reading him. I think the last time I picked him up was in October or November, so I was very happy to have him in my life again. Next, we have another book that I have talked about on my channel before. I'll link that video up here again somewhere. It's Devotions by Mary Oliver. I absolutely loved this. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars because I didn't love every poem in this collection, but I really enjoyed a lot of them. She is kind of my introduction to poetry. I've read Anne Sexton before, and I also read Vita Nuova by Dante. But that's a mixture of prose and poetry, and the themes don't really cross over to Mary Oliver's Devotions. So, Mary Oliver, she loves nature. She's a nature girly. All of her poems talk about nature, spirituality, and just kind of like simple living almost. Like how important it is to just listen to the birds and how positive that effect can have on you, or to really just submit oneself to nature and just live in it. And it's so good. Like, it's just so good. I'm not going to talk about this too much because I already have, but some of my favorite poems in this edition are Goldenrods, Rain, was it Dogfish? I think it was Dogfish. That one was great too. Invitation. Let me see which other ones I tabbed. I actually tabbed a lot in here. This was really good. Definitely want to read more Mary Oliver in the future. I also want to read William Faulkner because he was a huge inspiration to Mary Oliver. I also have a feeling that Emily Dickinson was an inspiration to Mary Oliver. I don't know if that's true. I could really just be making that up, but I know a lot of her poems also had to do with nature. So highly, highly recommend this. The next book, oh my gosh, Hamlet. Oh, wait, oh. I thought I was holding it the wrong way, and I was holding it the right way the whole time. This, 5 stars. I absolutely loved Hamlet. I just love his wit, and like, I think that's what this play is most known for. A little bit about Hamlet is Hamlet's dad wants him to avenge his death and to kill Claudius. I'm not going to spoil this because even though it was written a really, really long time ago, and at this point, you probably should have an idea of what happens, I didn't. So I'm not going to spoil it for you. As I think I've mentioned before, I love these editions because like half of, like one page is the play and then one page is full of notes. So it is really easy to read. I think out of all the Shakespeare plays I have read this year, this one was the most difficult just because Hamlet is so witty. The sarcasm, jokes, they just have not translated to our time. And I actually will say I still like Macbeth better, but Hamlet was great. I gave this 5 stars and I still feel comfortable with that decision. So I actually haven't finished this book yet, but I am including it. I am gonna finish it this weekend, I swear. But it's taking me a while to get through because this is not my favorite book. This is Notes from a Dead House by Dostoevsky. This book was written based on his notes from prison, so you can assume it's a pretty realistic explanation. Now, I'm feeling the same thing with this book that I felt with Seneca's book because this was published in like the mid 1800s, I think 1861. At the time, this book was probably more revolutionary and more notable because it's accounting a Siberian like labor camp, like a hard labor camp prison experience. I feel like bad saying this, but it wasn't super affecting. Like even there are like pretty gruesome descriptions of flogging and lashings, and it is horrible to read. I'm not gonna like it doesn't bring me joy or anything, but I feel like I'm desensitized towards it, if I'm honest. Like living in the time that we live in, not much is censored, especially where I live, which is in America. So his account is not revolutionary to me, it's not shocking. And this was also written before World War II. And I think at that time, after what was happening in Germany and Auschwitz, I think after all that horrible, horrible stuff came out, people really realized how evil other people can be. And for that reason, I don't think this is super affecting. Dostoevsky also talks about how real some of these people are. They're not just monsters and horrible people. Like, these people are multifaceted and do have good in them, but I think that's also something that is known, and that not all criminals are just these horrible, terrible people, but they actually, you know, are normal in a way. Like they're also people. They just did horrible things, but that doesn't mean everything they've ever done has been horrible. So I'm gonna give this like 3 stars. I also don't like the way it's written. This is very much like telling and not showing, which is why I'm not like super invested in it. Even though we do have a protagonist and a narrator, we're not like following a specific storyline. We're kind of just learning about the prison, the prisoners, and like overhearing things. So it's not like a set story, and we don't follow a set plot. And for that reason too, I can't like just read it, and that makes me so sad. So I don't know if I'd really recommend this book unless you're into prison stories, or if you're like me and just want to know more about Dostoevsky as a person, as an author, what he's been through in his life and how it's translated to his other works, because that is why I'm reading it. And I figured this wouldn't be my favorite Dostoevsky book, but I did hope I'd like it a little more. And hopefully I do finish this today or tomorrow, because honestly, I just want to be done with it. And I do feel bad saying that, but it's true. Those are all the books that I read in the month of March. I'm super excited to read some good books in April. Let me know what you've started for this month. I'd love to know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.